Yes. All set.
Okay, I'd like to call this presentation.
Thank you for starting.
Everybody will take a seat. We will get into this. This is our fourth one out of 4. This year's gone by quickly, especially the summer. Seems like it was just July 4th. So thanks everybody for coming out and enjoying the presentation. If you ever have a thought or an idea, don't hesitate to tell one of us here. We'll be glad to look into it. So without further ado, give it to Father D'Allion. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for coming out on this beautiful summer evening. Didn't think about how nice it would be this morning. Looked a little threatening, that's for sure. But here we are. Welcome to the Frank and Fannie Bartlett House and the Olean Point Museum Summer Speaker Series, and my name is Stephen Cocca. One of my favorite hobbies in retirement has been researching and writing articles for a magazine called the Western New York Heritage. It's a regional history quarterly published in Buffalo. And since September of 2011, I have written 13 articles for the paper, or the magazine, excuse me. It's an illustration-heavy periodical, and it covers all kinds of topics in the whole region, all of Western New York. And my contributions have been about Rwanda's Hollywood Theater, how Dunkirk got its name, for example, research into the Devil's Hole incident, and the story of Franklinville's star baseball player, Ed Tanner, for example, among many others. Since moving to Olean, though, 10 years ago, I have written about Olean's role in the oil boom. I've written about the archaeological dig at Canical Farms, the story of Carrie Myers, Olean's Queen of the Clouds, who died in 1907 in a balloon accident, famous southern tier amusement parks, including Olean's Cloud 9, the Olean Armory, and last year, on this lawn, I presented my findings here about gangster Al Capone, alleged visit, and his confrontation with Olean Chief of Police Jack Dempsey. This summer, my article about Father Joseph de la Roche was published, alongside a counter-opinion piece about the Friars Association with the oil spring in Cuba, and that counterpiece was written by former St. Bonaventure University Princeton Memorial Librarian Baron Alan Ash. The story presents both sides of the Father Joseph story, centered around the claim that he was the first European to observe oil at the oil spring, and that is at the oil spring territory of the Seneca Nation today. The Science Building at St. Bonaventure University is named after him, and the oil industry in St. Bonaventure have supported the claim that he was the first European to see the spring in 1627. The article is in, as I said, the Western New York Heritage. This is what the magazine's cover looks like. And you can buy it here in Olean at Tops Market. There's a newsstand in the front of the store that you can find it, and that's what it begins. And it's a long piece because both pieces are represented. I wrote the introduction, Mary Ellen Ash did the counter piece, and then my piece appears at the end. So there's a lot of illustrations, and I think it's well worth the $10 cover price. We don't get paid, but it's well worth it. I think you'd enjoy the magazine. So tonight, I invite you to participate in my presentation about Father Joseph by serving as a juror in an imaginary mock trial. No, the priest is not charged with any crime. Rather, it's his role and his association with the spring that you will be asked to judge. You will be presented with a summary of the facts, and I hope you all got a fact sheet when you came in. The judge will preside over the trial. Her name is Vicky Cocca. Married to me, although she's dressed like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's going to question two witnesses, a witness for the prosecution, the star witness, will be a noted Canadian archaeologist who will present evidence that he said proves that Father Joseph did not visit the spring, and therefore cannot be credited as the first European to visit the oil spring and find oil in North America. Then she will question the star witness of the defense, Father Joseph himself, who will try to convince you that it's very possible that he made the journey to see the oil spring, and while not actually discovering it, he insists that he was the first European to see it or view it. At the end of these two presentations, we will ask you to vote guilty or not guilty on the authenticity of the legend of Father Joseph in the oil spring. If you vote guilty, you agree with the prosecution that the legend has been invented, and you can help to debunk it. And it's been a legend that's been perpetuated through the ages since a lot of time, since 1876 is when the legend first was given credence. If you vote not guilty, you agree with the defense that Father Joseph could have visited the site. The charge in the trial does not include the word discovery. Instead, it's just the possibility of the journey and the observation that's being questioned. You decide after you hear the testimony from these two highly qualified witnesses. The handout that we've given you contains 3 valuable pieces of information that will assist you in your deliberations. The first bit of information includes the uncontested facts of the case. If you don't wish to read them all, the judge is going to summarize them for you in her presentation. The next is the portion of the letter of July 18, 1627, which contains the key phrase essential to this case. And the last bit of information is the quote from William J. Buck's 1876 presentation, which makes the claim that we are examining tonight. And also, you will be given a ballot at the end. We'll pass those out to you, and you will have the opportunity to make your decision. So, without further ado, let's present the judge and let's begin the trial.
Order. Come to order. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been commissioned to determine whether or not the legend of Father Joseph de la Roche D'Allion, being the first European to observe oil in North America at the site of the oil spring in modern-day Seneca Nation of Indians oil spring territory, is invented, or is it possible that he indeed made the journey from modern-day Canada to the site sometime in 1627? We have identified 12 uncontested facts in the case, and you will find them detailed in the packet, and I will summarize them for you. The Recollect order came to North America over 400 years ago. Father Joseph arrived in Quebec in 1625. There, he learned the Huron language and traveled to the Huron land a year later. In October of 1626, he received orders to travel south to the land of the Neutral, where he stayed for over 3 months. He was ordered back to Quebec in January of 1627, but he did not report there until early 1628. Father Joseph was called back to France and died there in 1656. He never returned to New France. Nothing was said about a visit to the oil spring until 1876, nearly 250 years later, when a noted Pennsylvania historian gave a lecture and claimed that Father Joseph visited the spring in storage tanks on the vast field east of the campus. The oil industry held a ceremony in 1927 at the site of the spring and affixed a plaque to a stone naming Father Joseph as the first man of European descent to find oil in North America. 7 years later, St. Bonaventure College dedicated and named the Science Hall after him. We will now hear the testimony of two expert witnesses. First, for the prosecution, a noted professor, archaeologist, and historical researcher, William Charles Noble of McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Dr. Noble, in the late 1970s, you published several articles regarding the neutrals based upon your research in and around Hamilton, Ontario. You also became one of the earliest deniers of the Father Joseph legend. Could you elaborate for the jury?
Thank you. Yes. In my research, lectures, and published articles and books on the neutral nation in the late 1970s, I was able to confirm Father Joseph's work with the neutrals. However, I reached two significant conclusions about Father Joseph's alleged visit to the oil spring near Cuba, New York. First, my archaeological digs confirmed, through the finding of some physical evidence, that Father Joseph did indeed minister among the neutrals, primarily in the vicinity of Mount Hope, near present-day Hamilton, Ontario.
What was the evidence?
We found a large, multifaceted bead, like that found in a rosary, at the site of a neutral village from the year 1620 that we call the Donovan village in Ancaster Township. Since the rosary bead was not similar to the beads used by the Jesuits in their rosaries, but more like the Recollects, we concluded that it likely belonged to Father Joseph, as he was reported to be with the neutrals at the time. His personal effects, including his rosary and his breviary, had been stolen from him in an attempt on his life. This village is about 7 miles from Onatistata, the village of Suahausa, the neutral chief that befriended Father Joseph and sheltered him from further harm.
So you can confirm that Father Joseph was with the neutral nation, correct?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. He did minister to the neutrals in and around present-day Hamilton, confirming the reports of Fathers Sagard and Leclerc, who wrote years later about his activities.
But Doctor, you indicated that you believe Father Joseph had never left the neutral territory. Why?
Well, our research, Your Honor, has concluded that the neutral territory was very small, perhaps limited to just a 20-mile radius around present-day Hamilton. They lived in only 6 or 8 small villages and were obviously not numerous. Therefore, he could have never crossed the Niagara River because the territory of the neutrals did not extend that far east, and he could have never penetrated deep into the interior, as William Buck attested in his speech.
Were there other people living in this region?
Vast area, Your Honor, between the villages of the neutrals and the powerful Onondaga, the Seneca people, who lived along the Genesee River, was neither entirely uninhabited, nor under neutral control, nor even under Seneca control in 1627. In the vast area that we now call Western New York were the Erie and the Wenro people, equal in size and power to the neutral.
I imagine travel 1600s would have been hazardous, correct?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. Yes. Travel into what is now western New York would have been hazardous and even impossible, even if accompanied by a chief like Suras, since that chief would have had no sway with other tribal groups, especially Seneca, who also hunted and traveled in the vast forest between the Niagara and the Genesee, which was close, by the way. The Genesee River is close to the oil spring. There is also the question of the distance. It is over 130 miles from Hamilton to Cuba, New York, using modern-day highways. In the early 1600s, these did not exist. Only trails, narrow, uneven, difficult to traverse.
In your professional opinion, then, could Father Joseph have made this journey?
Oh, it's very, very unlikely. Very unlikely that Father Joseph penetrated the interior as Puck and the other believers insist.
Well, what other research helps to debunk the Father Joseph story?
The biggest area of doubt comes from the translation and the meaning of a word in the famous letter of 1627.
Who wrote the letter?
Father Joseph wrote the letter. In the letter, Father Joseph describes his stay in neutral territory. He mentions the abundant food and recounts his positive reception there, despite the attempt on his life by some Hurons who were unhappy with his presence among the neutral. But most importantly, Father Joseph specifically points out a type of oil used by the neutrals. He uses the French phrase trabin d'huile, a good oil they call atun. Before using that phrase, he writes, there are pumpkins, beans, and other vegetables in profusion. It is this word and phrase which Buck and the other promoters of the Father Joseph legend base their claim that the oil that he describes is of the petroleum kind, not that produced from vegetables.
Does Father Joseph mention the journey anywhere else in the letter?
Nowhere else. In no other place in his 6-page letter does Father Joseph mention anything about a 130-mile journey through dense forest, under constant threat from numerous enemies and wildlife, or the physical site of the spring, let alone the return journey.
So, let me understand this. The oil he refers to is vegetable oil, not petroleum?
Those of us, Your Honor, who do not believe that Father Joseph made the journey, point out this flaw in the believer's logic. The oil he refers to is clearly vegetable oil, not petroleum, and it could be produced in the villages of the neutrals. They did not need to travel deep into the interior to obtain it.
Doctor, please clarify your position on Father Joseph's visit.
The oil industry, and by default, St. Bonaventure University, have fabricated and perpetuated this story to justify the harvesting of this resource under the umbrella of discovery. He did not discover oil of the petroleum kind. I am confident in saying that Father Joseph, while he did visit and stay with the neutrals in and around Hamilton, Ontario, did not journey further eastward or southward to the present site of the oil spring in Cuba.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan.
Thank you.
Eager to hear the opposition.
Yes, we're going to do it. It's time for a costume. We will now call the witness for the defense in a minute. Father Joseph Roche D'Allion, OFL. First, some background. Father Joseph is a member of the Recollect order, different than the Franciscans we know here in Olean. The Recollects were a mendicant order of Franciscans, meaning they were dependent on charity for food shelter. They lived communally in what we call the convents, ministered to the poor and sick in the surrounding countryside and villages, and were separated from the other Franciscans because they desired to observe the way of St. Francis in the strictest sense. For example, the Franciscan friars here now have dispensations to live and work in urban settings, teaching schools, and to do parish work. They can also live separately from the larger community. At the time of Father Joseph, the Recollects lived more of a hermit lifestyle in the community, although both orders ministered to the poor and the sick. Samuel de Champlain came to the order and asked them to join his mission in New France to convert souls to Christianity and to minister to the native population, soldiers, and also settlers in the colony. The first Recollect friars came to North America in 1615. We will take a minute because Father Joseph is elderly and he needs a couple of minutes to get himself.
He'll be ready in a second.
He'll be ready in a second. Okay, we hear from the dressing room.
That's their first goodie right there. You gotta put on a cincture.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, the cincture. The word comes down to his ankles, not just
Court
his
takes a
knees.
recess in a minute.
Yeah, because that's right. Short recess. This is our law and order.
That's
review.
immodest the way he's got that roll. You get him whether he's a real
He
recollect.
needs a dresser, doesn't he?
Is he a real recollect? That rope doesn't reach his ankles as it should.
Oh, goodness.
Well,
Oh, the
we're
hammer.
doing the best we can.
I had to borrow the hammer of my 8th grade Christmas clay out of down there. The Irenaeus, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I know. Come on, Gramps.
Back in the
I
day.
guess it's the last year's.
I'm ready.
Whew.
Just like everybody else with
Yeah, really.
falling down.
I didn't realize it started back then. But
So you know the name, Irenaeus.
Oh, yeah. Joseph, when did you come to New France?
I visited, came to the New World from the port of Dieppe in France in June of 1625.
And what orders did you receive from your superiors?
My superiors initially directed me to travel to the Huron territory, and soon thereafter I was instructed to venture into the territory of the neutral nation where no Frenchman had ever traveled or no priest had ever ministered. This was a journey of over 120 miles, ending at the first neutral village in late September of 1626. I stayed with the neutrals until January of 1627, when I was instructed to return to Quebec. With the onset of winter and the English invasion of Quebec, I had to delay my return to New France and spent the rest of the winter months in a Huron village, where I composed a letter to a friend in France about my experience with the neutrals. I returned to Quebec in 1628.
If you visited the oil spring sometime in 1627, why did you not mention it in your letter that you wrote to your friend in France?
Your Honor, my mission to the neutrals had two purposes. The first is spiritual, to convert the Indians to Christianity, and the second was politically motivated.
As a missionary, Father, we can understand the first purpose, but please explain the political purpose of your mission to the neutrals.
Well, you see, Your Honor, France competed with the Dutch in the early 1600s for the valuable commodity of the fur from animals like the fox, bear, and most importantly, the beaver. Our tiny colony of New France centered around the settlement of Quebec. The Dutch built Fort Orange, modern-day Albany, and both colonies established a robust and profitable trade for the exchange of European goods like kettles, pots, blankets, cloth, and even guns and powder, for the fur brought by the native population, which within just a few years had exhausted the local supply. These native hunters and trappers were forced to look to the west for a source of fur. The Mohawk and the other nations of the powerful Iroquois Confederacy, who first allied themselves with the Dutch and afterwards with the English, looked to the same geographic area as the Huron, who lived on the eastern shore of the lake that today bears their name, and had allied themselves with the French. But this new trade had disrupted the previous vigorous trade that native nations had with each other in peaceful intercourse.
So, what was the problem with this arrangement, Father?
The problem, Your Honor, was that both sides sought the same geographic area in competition.
And what area was that?
It was called the Ohio Country, a land of many rivers that drain into the Ohio River and Lake Erie, and also the lower Great Lakes. Both groups, the Huron and the Iroquois, wanted to control this vast hunting and trapping paradise.
You mentioned a previous trade arrangement that was peaceful. How did this fur trade disrupt that arrangement?
Native nations traded peacefully for centuries for goods such as animal skins, food, baskets, flint, wampum, beads, and oil. Vast trade networks were established and functioning well before the Spanish, French, Dutch, Swedes, and the English came to the Americas. These networks even stretched into Central and South America well before the Vikings or Columbus ever reached what we like to call the New World. The fur trade changed all of this because European trade goods were far superior and unfamiliar to native people, and soon all of them became dependent upon those goods, replacing many of the items that had formerly formed the basis of a peaceful trade between those nations. Now people had to trade with Europeans with a dwindling resource, rather than with one that was in abundance, found in the never-ending resources found in the forest environment.
The mention of oil is of great interest to us here tonight. But first, could you explain your role in this shift?
Your Honor, because of our charge to convert souls to Christianity, we were compelled to travel deep into the interior. Therefore, we could become like advanced scouts and the eyes and ears of the governors and leaders of the infant colony. In our case, we traveled among the Huron, converting them and cementing their alliance with New France, while also seeking a more direct connection to the cornucopia of wealth in the land of the Ohio and the Great Lakes, as well as linking Quebec to our colony in Louisiana. My superiors knew at the western end of the lake called Erie, there was a large river, which that river penetrated and went all the way to Ontario. And we had learned that that lake and river led to a vast waterway to the Ohio Territory. I was ordered to contact the nation we called the Neutral, who were on the peninsula between Lakes Ontario and Erie, and see if an alliance with them might provide an easier route, bypassing the route from the north through the Huron Territory.
Now, what about the oil, Father?
And as you know, Your Honor, there are two main types of oil. The first is the kind produced by vegetables such as pumpkin and corn, and by plants like sunflowers. And there is an oil that comes from the ground or from rocks. All the nations we encountered had vegetable oil, and it was a frequently traded commodity. The oil from the ground or seeping between rocks, however, was a different matter entirely. The Neutrals seemed to have a unique position as they had a source or several sources for this kind of oil that was sacred to them.
What made it so sacred?
Native people used it and believed it that it was a medicine, a strong medicine, and they also used it for a practical reason. They covered themselves with it to prevent insect bites.
So the neutral access to this source of oil, or at least one of its sources, also held another interest, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. The neutrals were very numerous and powerful enough to hold sway over the people who inhabited the vast area to their east, in what is now known as Western New York. This arrangement allowed them, along with the equally powerful Seneca, to more or less share dominion over this land, giving them a bountiful hunting ground and access to a spring where the oil pooled into a great pond and was in great abundance. An alliance with them would greatly benefit New France.
We have been told that the distance, a trip of about 130 miles one way, would have been impossible in 1627. Is that true?
No, Your Honor. The native people had a vast and well-developed system of trails, many of which have become your own highways today, such as Route 16, 219, and Old Route 17. These trails were hard-packed, and experienced travelers could easily complete a 20 to 30 mile leg each day.
Can you prove that?
Yes, dear. In two ways. First, as I mentioned, today's highways were then previously used as wagon trails, but those wagon trails followed existing native or Indian trails. Secondly, I was fit enough to travel great distances, proven by the fact that I walked and paddled a canoe 500 miles from Quebec to Huronia, and then another 120 miles to the territory of the neutral and back. I was certainly capable of going 150 miles.
Well, finally, Father, why didn't you write about your journey to the oil spring?
Sadly, Your Honor, war had broken out between my country, France, and England in Europe in 1627, and it spilled over to the colonies in the New World. England invaded our colony of New France in 1627 and captured Quebec later that year. If I had written about my travels to the oil spring and back in this previously unknown territory, and if the letter had been captured, the English would have used the information to expand their gains in our colony and perhaps build new alliances with the native population, much to our disadvantage. I had to keep my secret and report it directly to my soldiers.
Thank you, Father Joseph. You are excused. Now comes your part of this. You have to work. Now, you, the audience, will become the jurors in this case. Is the story of Father Joseph de la Roche's visit to the oil spring on the Seneca Nation of Indians territory near Cuba, New York, true or false? Using the ballots, which will be handed out, mark your verdict, fold it, and we will come and collect. Your vote of guilty means you think the story was fabricated by the oil industry and supported by St. Bonaventure University in the 1930s to justify oil exploration and extraction in our region. In other words, it's not true. He did not make the journey to the oil spring. A vote of not guilty means you believe Father de la Roche could have visited and observed the oil spring in 1627, 400 years ago. In other words, he could have made the journey. Please check your ballot. We will collect and tabulate the results.
I have a question for the judge. Can I dismiss myself from the jury because I'm against the oil industry?
You must vote.
When you hear,
Thank you. You all done?
No, we didn't get
Oh,
anything.
no, you didn't give me the ballot.
I guess we just passed the
when you
file
hear,
or something.
yes.
Yeah, I have a buyer's card.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty,
I knew it.
very good. Alright,
We're
it
doing
should
this,
be coming. We're doing
not only historic, but actually trying to
You each get a, you each
Just
get
get
your
a
own
bill.
individual ballot.
wills and this.
Guilty or not guilty? When I pound my gavel, gavel will announce.
I'm big in the oil, as people say.
Do we cheat them and how? Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've been deep in oil history for a long time.
Oh, God. They don't get me.
Yeah. Oh, the tension is building.
We should have some dramatic music.
Okay, Dan?
One from Jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You got a friend here already.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Everyone got one? Here, get a ballot.
Trees and more trees.
As an election inspector in Fairlight County.
Another dual role.
They what? The missionaries were great.
He helped you count those ballots?
Okay, here we go. Not guilty. It is possible. Okay, we got one not guilty. Three for not guilty. Not guilty. Four. Oh, you're good. Guilty. Okay.
I know who voted that one.
Not guilty. Five. Not guilty.
You see the trend already?
Oh, I think there's a trend. I think early polling shows, yes. Not guilty. Guilty. Yeah, I didn't make it. Couldn't have gone all that way. Not guilty.
Yeah, look at that.
Guilty.
3 against 8.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Yeah. I think the AP is going to call this.
Not guilty.
Guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
And not guilty. So by overwhelming majority, almost 3 to 1, we think Father Joseph did indeed make that journey.
He would never tell a
It's
lie.
possible he did it.
Bernie, you had just about voting, right?
Well, I was telling Steve that yesterday on my way back from Elmira. I went over to the oil spring
Oh.
and remarked about the new fence around the pool and the rock.
The rock.
And I tried to read the rock. It's hard to.
It's old.
But that what I did was take a soil sample because I got a backache, and perhaps that oil is good for that. Hopefully, I could use it to do my own investigation.
Very good. Yeah, they built a new bridge, a wooden bridge over what the stream that is the outlet stream from Cuba Lake, and they built a brand new bridge. And but the rock, as I described in the article, the rock was a piece of granite to which they affixed a metal plate,
Okay.
and that metal plate is in bronze. And it's very faded, but you can still read it. And there's a good picture done at the dedication in 1927. There were 3,000 people that attended that dedication, and all of a sudden, about halfway through, the rain came, and it poured. So they moved everyone over to the Olive site of where the Olive amusement park was located on Cuba Lake. They moved everyone over to that pavilion, and they finished the speeches. There were representatives from the national U.S. petroleum industry. There was a representative from the New York State petroleum producers, and then there was a representative from the oil people around here, including Mr. Bartlett, who the Country Club is named after. He was one of the speakers, and a priest from the province came. His name was Father Bonaventure, interestingly enough, and he portrayed Father Roche, and he and two Seneca men dressed in Western garb, with the headdresses going down their backs, marched to the oil spring and dipped their cup into the oil spring and presented it to the mayor of Cuba, New York. So that was done in 1927. Now there is talk in Cuba of a new celebration marking the 400 years next summer. But nothing is confirmed yet. Nothing carved in stone or put on granite. Any other questions? Yes.
I don't know how many people were here at my presentation a couple of years ago about the cultures that were in this area, but Steve was over talking logistics of did he have time and how many miles a day and all that, and he could have made the trip down here, and there were at least 4 known cultures that lived here, and you're getting back into prehistory. One was called the Allegheny, and some of them think they were the northern edge of the Adena mound builders, the first mound builders in this area. Then you had the Hopewell mound builders that came up through here, and there's some talk of battles and integrating later, but there are mounds all over western New York, 300 or 400 mounds, including Olean. Extensive trails going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. You can see remnants. Over near Andover, there's a sign, and you can see part. But it'd be a depression, and you know, it would be a trail 1,000 years old. You're bound to have a depression. That was before horses and everything. So then you had the Erie Indians, who were blood brothers of the Senecas, but the Senecas wiped out about a dozen tribes over the beaver trade. And the Eries, they had a big battle up near Honeoye Lake and wiped out the Eries. And what these tribes would do is they'd lose a lot of people due to disease and war, so they would either kill you or adopt you. So they integrated Eries. They actually beat the Hurons, but they integrated a lot of different tribes, and you know, there were the Wenros up between Buffalo and Rochester, the Neutrals over the Niagara Peninsula up into Canada, the Hurons farther north.
Platoons, the tobacco nation.
Platoons, yeah, Wenros. A lot of different tribes long since forgotten, but so this was an Erie hunting ground. Their main settlement was between Rochester and Cleveland, and then they got wiped out, and then Senecas took this over. They were the last ones to take this territory over. So you had Alleghenies, you had Hopewell mound builders, you had Eries, and you had Senecas that we know of, and there may have been earlier. And archaeology just didn't dig deep enough, and now they're digging deeper and finding several multicultural sites around here. And you know, Fornes Park has a mound. There were a mound near the East State Street Bridge, and a mound on the way to Hinsdale on Union Valley Road. And you go into the books, they're few and far between in the southern tier, but Squire and Davis that did the Ohio Mounds for the Smithsonian did one up here, and Larkin's book out of Randolph, Ancient Man in America, has diagrams of forts and mounds and everything around here. It's wonderful stuff, and it's a very complex history, but the trail system was extensive, and he definitely could have made it down here. That's his article.
Dave supplied me with an unbelievable map. That map is the map that came from Edgar Russell in Perrysburg, New York. And Russell added additional material from his research and put it in the book, People in the Longhouse, by Lewis Morgan and Eli Parker.
Question, Steve.
think it is entirely possible that he could do it. And there's a modern day reference to being able to walk 20 to 30 miles a day. Our 13-year-old next door neighbor across the street neighbor is practicing for walking there. That is eventually what she would get up to, is 25 to 30 miles in the stretch of
In a day.
normal working day, 8 hours plus. So, if she can do it, and she would just, she was not well, and she can do it now. I think, and especially since he already completed a 500-mile journey, canoeing and walking 500 miles. I think the man was physically fit, able to do it. They ate well in those years. You remember a lot of the diets with a lot of protein, and they had that. They were used to sleeping on the ground. It was no different. I wouldn't want to try it today, but I think he could.
100% sure, 90% sure.
I'd have to talk to him.
Gut feeling?
My gut feeling is that it's better than 50%. Better than 50%. He had reason, he had motivation to do it. That alliance with the neutral was strong. We had a friend in Stuart Hassan who would have guided him to the site. He would have had reason to do it and the help to do it. So I'd say better than 50%. I can't.
Another question down here.
Yes.
I should be asking this of my neighbor here. If it's such an important part of our local history and it's been renovated, the lawn is kept up, there's a new fencing and all that, are they ashamed of it? The entrance has no big sign. It did at one time, but doesn't now. Who is responsible for the upkeep?
I think, Bernie, we, in this particular case, we have to defer to the Seneca Nation of Indians. It is on their territory. It is land that they own, land that they control. It's under their rule. Now, are they ashamed of it? I wouldn't reason why they would be ashamed of it, because the site, talks glowingly about the fact that oil was found there, and they're a part of it. They're connected to it. So I don't really know if they're ashamed of it, but whether or not they want to develop it as a tourist site, and how many people would be interested in going there if they put up another gambling casino or a tax I don't know. I don't know if there would be enough draw. You know what I mean?
I thought you had all the answers, Steve.
Anything else?
Steve?
Yes.
One more little fun fact. I found out that, Treaty of Big Tree in Geneseo in late 1700s set up 10 or 11 reservations, including the oil spring, for the Senecas. And that's where they officially signed off their land. And they didn't have a concept of fencing off land and land usage. They thought they could hunt and fish everywhere, even though they gave away some rights to white people. So their concept of ownership really was use rather than ownership. And so there are a lot of stories of, even after people came in and settled in Western New York, somebody come to the door and walk in and sleep by your fireplace and eat your meal and then leave the next morning, and that's the Indian way. And they didn't understand fencing and what they really gave away. Well, they were dispossessed by the Ogden Land Company, the Buffalo Creek Reservation south of Buffalo down near Lackawanna. And so 11 reservations are down to, like 3 or 4. You've got the Allegheny Reservation, the Cattaraugus Reservation, Tonawanda Reservation up near Clarence, and then the Tuscaroras that came up from North Carolina, their reservation up near Niagara Falls. Well, interesting thing, they were dispossessed of the oil spring along the way, and Civil War Governor Horatio Seymour, he and his father were land speculators down here, and Seymour had land with Samuel Homer of Homer Hill and Olean down here, but also invaded and owned part of the oil spring, and white men took over the oil spring. ancient Governor Blacksnake, who was related to, Corn Planter and Red Jacket and all the famous Indians, was near his deathbed. He was 110 years old, and nobody could prove the deed to the oil spring. And he goes, wait a second, go to my trunk. And they went to his trunk, and he had the only known copy that the Senecas had a right to the oil spring, and Seymour and all the landowners had to leave, and it became Seneca property in perpetuity.
It's only a square mile. It's not that big, right?
So it's more, spiritual and ceremonial for them. And in terms of the upkeep, it is totally on the nation, and I guess it's a question of priorities. Where are the priorities?
Who's going to do it?
Well, again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.